Acogs on defense never used to be an issue until Ubisoft made it an issue, and now subsequently they are picking up their mess and finally doing something about it. I'm not saying they've done this intentionally. Visions of the game change, teams change, developers change. However, this game went through a period of balancing that was so bad and lazy that it caused an issue like this to exist, that now the current team had to make the decision to remove Acog from defense in Year 10 Season 3. And that's why I think that this is a good balancing update to remove them on defense after years of poor balancing updates, which has resulted in this issue to begin with. And it's going to be a big point I'm making in this video, and I think it's important that you watch it to the end, because I think a lot of you will agree with what I'm saying, and even if you may disagree with the removal of Acog, we will all agree how we got to this point is because of bad balancing. So just take a listen. So in Year 10 Season 3, Operation High Stakes, Acog is officially being removed on defense unless it's a slug shotgun or a DMR. I've personally been in favor of this change for years. I don't think it should still be on the DMRs. Heck, Aruni and Tubarão having a DMR in defense to begin with is strong enough. That's like the strongest weapon class in the game. They don't need an Acog on top of that. I'm perfectly fine with it remaining on slug shotguns. I don't think they're oppressive enough that everyone's going to start running them. But for a good while now, one of the most problematic operators on defense has been Doc, mainly due to the mix of his Acog and his self-healing, allowing for an aggressive playstyle. Now, I've played Rainbow Six Siege since 2017. Throughout that entire time, Doc has had an Acog, and I'll admit, and I think a lot of you can agree here, I never found Doc oppressive or overpowered. Doc was fine. Same with Rook. Heck, a lot of us would maybe even consider them underpowered at that time. But what has happened over these years which has made Doc and Rook and these operators with Acog come more problematic? Well, that was Ubisoft's bad balancing during the 1.5 times scope meta. Now, I'm going to use the 1.5 and the Acog a bit interchangeably here. I know they're different magnifications, but it has shown that the effect they have had on the game are very similar. The effect they had on operators when given to them worked pretty much the same way. It didn't matter that they were different magnifications, they still had the same outcome over a one-time scope. So in the current day of Siege, we have one-time scopes and we have the Acog, which is 2.5. We also have a few in between for like Glaz and Kali. We have the telescopic scopes on DMRs, which are 3 times if I'm not wrong, but no one uses them. But the main 2 scopes are either a one-time scope, which is like Iron Sights, Holographic Reflex, or an Acog. That's how the game also used to be for a majority of its life. But in Operation Shadow Legacy, Ubisoft decided to do a bit of an in-depth rework to scopes and added a bunch of more different magnifications. Introducing the 1.5 times scope, the 2 times scope, the 2.5 times scope, which was now Acog, which used to be a 3 times scope, but they brought it down by 0.5, then making 3 times its own category as well. So we had 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3, all going up in increments of 0.5, starting from the 1 time scopes, which we all know as holographics, reflex, and red dots. Now, was this a bad update? Absolutely not. This was extremely cool. They went more in depth with scopes, introducing a bunch of different varieties, and I think we can all agree that it was an absolutely sick update. I loved it. I think they've done a great job here. This is not me bashing them for doing this update. And when they done this, a lot of operators on both attack and defense were given different variations of scopes. At this time, scopes would always leave and be given to different operators. This was before they made the decision that in Operation Deadly Omen, which was Year 9 Season 1, that all attackers will have the Acog on every weapon. So it was kind of free game. Any attacker or defender could lose a 1.5 or a 2 times or a 2.5 and be reverted back to just a 1 times operator. They would use this as a balancing tool across the board for every single operator on both sides. Not only that, they would also use weapon recoil as a major balancing factor as well, trying to focus on the strength of a certain weapon rather than how useful the operator themselves is. This is already a tricky situation, but they absolutely fumbled it and blew open Pandora's box. They were sick and tired of Ash being an entry fragger, that Ayana ended up being the main entry fragger, a support operator. Why? Because they nerfed Ash's recoil. They got rid of her Acog. They just made her an undesirable pick. Same was happening on defense. Oh, this operator isn't strong enough. We have an underperforming gadget. Give him the 1.5 times scope. Warden isn't performing well. Give him the 1.5. Thorn isn't performing well. Give her the 1.5. Oryx isn't performing well. Give him the 1.5. Ubisoft's balancing during this era pushed the player base into prioritizing stronger weapons and better scopes over the operator gadgets, thus creating a problem that never existed before. We would end up in a TDM meta because of Ubisoft's terrible balancing. And I'll call it terrible now because I called it terrible back then. I was always vocally saying, why are you saying in a patch note that Thorn's gadget is underperforming and in the same patch note buffing her weapon? Like, you've already said the issue with Thorn. Why are you giving her a 1.5 times scope? Thorn ended up being one of the most played defenders, even though her gadget is still underperforming. That was terrible, lazy balancing, which did not address the issues they even highlighted, and it pushed players into playing more aggressive, and it started to make these scopes an issue. Ubisoft's own balancing were making players play in this way. There was no way that we could blame the player base for prioritizing operators with better recoil and better scopes when Ubisoft's own balancing were working around that very same thing. Here's a meme that I made years ago at that time, which just goes to show you how bad the balancing was. So after years of the worst period of balancing in Rainbow Six Siege, we get into Year 9 Season 1, where Ubisoft makes the bold decision, which I supported, to basically revert the scope changes which came in Operation Shadow Legacy and go back to just having the one-time scope and the Acog, which was now known as the magnified scope, being the two different scopes in the game. We're going to get rid of all the different 0.5 iterations between them. We're just going back to either a one-times or a magnified. It didn't mean they left everything behind. The scope casings for the 1.5 times scope became another magnified Acog scope with a bit of a reticle change as well, putting them all in the same magnification because it was just that much of a nightmare for balancing. But now in Year 9 Season 1, where we're back at the stage we were before Shadow Legacy, which was Year 5 Season 3, we still have the fallout of this meta which the balancing has then pushed, and also the fallout of these operators. So what they kind of did was basically anyone who kind of had an Acog before the changes in Year 5 Season 3 pretty much kind of just went back to that. So like Echo, Doc and Rook, there would still be some changes, but nothing crazy like there was before. And there was also a brand new rule that every single attacker on every single weapon will have the Acog. No questions asked, they'll never lose it. Every single weapon on attack has an Acog. Why? Well, the 1.5 meta did show that even if an attacker has a magnified scope, it doesn't necessarily sway the pick rate as much as it does as the defender. It's not as big as a balancing tool on attack as it is on defense, and due to the fact that defense has the inherent advantage due to having the map control and the timer on their side, giving attackers the Acog to push the building with didn't break the game. And that's why I love this update, because we were finally starting to wipe the slate clean. We were finally now going to get buffs on attack with the Acog not even in the conversation. Everyone has it, we don't have to worry about it. Let's just move on and balance attackers accordingly now. Look at other aspects of their loadout, look at their gadget. We don't even have to bring up the word Acog once. Every attacker has it, that's the set rule, cool. We don't have to do this again. And then on defense, we kind of just wanted it to go back to how we were before Shadow Legacy. Doc having the Acog, Rook having the Acog. It's how it used to be, everything's cushy. These operators are fine as is. Well, sorry, the balancing during that era has already made a lot of the players accustomed to prioritizing a scope over an operator's gadget. And now these players are just going to gravitate towards the Acog on these operators who never used to be problematic. Ubisoft started to toy with the idea of giving more defenders an Acog like Wamai. However, in the fallout of this 1.5 meta, people treated him the same way they did in that meta, and suddenly Wamai becomes an over-aggressive fragger. He then loses the Acog, and I think Ubisoft starts to realize this isn't going to be like the old days. We can't just have an Acog existing on defense and it not become a problem. Same with other operators they took a chance with, like Melusi. Eventually, we would get to the point where the operators who had Acog was Doc, Rook, Goyo on both his Vector and his TCSG, Kaid on his TCSG, Aruni and Tubarao on their DMRs, Tachanka on his SMG because no one uses it, and Echo, Castle, and Frost. Since when I lost the Acog, the people who would gravitate to this 1.5 meta, which is now reverted to the Acog era, well, who did they go to? They now went to Doc, leading to Doc becoming one of the most played defenders as well as one of the most aggressive, meaning that it was pretty obvious that he was next on the chopping block. However, Ubisoft have finally made the decision not to just remove Doc's Acog, but to remove them all. Because we all know it's been the trend in balancing ever since year 5 season 3. If they were to take this Acog away from Doc, everyone would then start playing Rook. They removed it from Rook, everyone would go to Frost, Castle, Goyo. It's just going to be a boring, repeated cycle, and they finally needed to put an end to it with this update. You can even see that based on the most recent charts. You can clearly see if they just took it away from only Doc, Goyo, Castle, or Rook would take his place. It's very evident that that would happen. Now, I don't think they went far enough just yet. I still think the DMRs need to go. Aruni and Tubarao, that scope needs to go on them as well. We have to set the slate clean here. We have to wipe it off and just start fresh. Get rid of it on the DMRs. I'm fine with the slug shotguns. Probably the strongest one is going to be the TCSG, especially since Sentry has it now. Again, don't think it's that oppressive of the weapon. The ACS-12 is on 3 operators. Good luck if you want to run the ACS-12. That fire rate is terrible, and I'll fry you instantly. If you want to run that for the Acog, be my guest. And the Bosch G is fine. It's a 2-shot. It got nerfed a few seasons ago. You can't really one-hit everyone like you used to. That's fine with the Acog. My issue is I do think the DMRs are going to end up being a part of the issue we're trying to avoid with this update, saying, well, if we remove Doc's Acog, they're all going to go play this other operator. I feel like Aruni and Tubarao are going to become those operators. I don't think the slug shotguns are as much as an issue as a DMR will, so I do want them to go that little extra edge and remove it from the DMRs as well. I have a feeling that they wanted to remove it from the DMRs. However, because Denari is such a big power creep to Aruni, I feel like they don't want to necessarily nerf Aruni right as Denari is coming out. I mean, they still could remove it from Tubarao, but then I guess it would have been a bit confusing as to why one DMR has it and the other doesn't. Yeah, just I would like to see it gone before the test server even ends. Just going into year 10 season 3 with the clean slate of all attackers have ACOGs, no defenders have ACOGs other than the ones with a slug shotgun. That's it. Don't touch it ever again. We just balance operators accordingly around that. Defense would still be the favorable side. It is going to be the favorable side. I'll tell you this for a fact. You could even remove them from the slug shotguns and defenders would still be the favorable. But I'm fine with it on slugs. But it would just give us that clean slate for balancing. We don't have to ever talk about scopes again. It's fine. We can introduce new casings in the magnification. That's fine. Introduce new one-time scopes. Introduce new ACOGs. That's fine. But we'll never have to worry about an ACOG balance ever again in Siege history. That is what this change is for. I don't think they went far enough because it's still in the DMRs, but that is how it should have been for years now. It is shown time and time again, and the reason why this even became an issue to begin with was because of the bad balancing which happened during the 1.5 meta. The current team are finally pulling up their pants and actually sorting this issue that was caused by, I don't know, the previous team, or maybe it was still them, I don't know. But I, for one, am in favor of this, and I hope that we can enter an era of Siege where we can just focus on other aspects of operators and never have to talk about a scope ever again. All the operators that lost the ACOG can now be balanced accordingly. I think they're all fine. I know people say that Castle and Frost fire rate are slow, but I do good on them. I think they're perfectly strong still. I don't think they're terrible. They're good in their class. They're good in their role, but you can disagree with me there. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.